Hello, it's Mark and Mitchell. I'm both of them at the same time. This is the Mathom House podcast. I got the name right.
I was just going to congratulate you about that.
Yeah, I'm very proud of myself, man. I finally can pronounce it. Good day. My microphone is turned on this time.
I was also going to congratulate you for that.
Yeah, so anybody who listened to last time's episode may have realized I sounded like I was far away. I was not far away. I just didn't have my microphone on. Still not sure what I'm doing all the way. It's all good. It's on now, and we are ready to go.
All right, and as promised, episode 2 is here exactly when we had time and wanted to do it. So no schedule.
Yeah, I work full time. Mark works a lot. We ain't got no consistency. It's all good. So what are we talking about today, Mark?
Well, as usual, and as usual, I mean, as last time and this time, we have 2 topics we're going to be talking about, and we're going to decide them in the random generator order thing. But
Which is
a D20.
20-sided dice for all those non-nerds out there.
It has 20 sides on it.
That's a lot of sides.
It is.
So what are our 2 choices, Mark?
Well, one of our choices is the first season of the TV series Rick and Morty.
Yeah, Rick and Morty. Marty, it's me.
I think
Rick.
I think your Morty impression is better.
Oh, I don't know, Rick. My Morty's pretty good, Rick. I don't know, man.
And then our second topic is the KPG Extinction event.
So I know nothing about this except for my theory about what it is.
Yeah, and we'll discuss that.
Yeah, so my birthday is on an odd numbered day. Mark's is on an even. That's how we decided whose dice gets what. So
All right.
roll the dice.
Okay, we
3.
rolled a 3, so that's an odd number.
Which means we're talking about Rick and Morty first, Mark. Mark, we're talking about Rick and Morty. So for those of you who don't know, Rick and Morty is a cartoon on Adult Swim. It's about a grandpa who's an alcoholic who takes out his 14-year-old grandson on a bunch of adventures.
Well, he's also a mad scientist, and that's kind of the crux of the show.
Yeah, so it's like, think Back to the Future, but instead of having Doc Brown as like a non-alcoholic, imagine him as an alcoholic.
Yeah, and where Doc Brown is like slightly morally ambiguous, but mostly a good guy.
Rick's terrible.
Rick is like, he isn't a bad guy per se, but he's definitely not a good guy.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, so it gets a lot of comparisons to Back to the Future. It's one of the bigger shows going on right now. I think season 3 just wrapped up on Sunday night, so we will be talking about it more, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. So about 11 episodes for this season, I believe. I have the list in front of me.
Yep,
Scrolling
11
down.
episodes.
So we're just going to go talk about the episodes, what we liked, what we didn't like. Then we're going to watch season 2 eventually, get Mark's opinion on that. So first one, wonderful title, called Pilot.
How did they come up with that?
I have no idea. They're great. So basically in this episode, it's the first episode, they're setting up an adventure. They go in a flying car, and they are trying to... I can't remember if it's episode 1.
Well, basically,
You describe it, Mark.
Well, basically, Rick is trying to get like equipment and resources for his experiments, and one of the objects that he needs is a kind of like a plant seed, kind of like a pine cone kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's like a pine cone that's about the size of your fist.
Right.
Give or take.
And it's apparently like a controlled substance, kind of think of like uranium or something like that. And so he basically invites his grandson along to be a mule to help him bring this thing past the alien security guards.
Yeah, so in this world, they go like outer space. This assumes that we are not the only life in the world. That's another podcast, though.
Well, and then the other part of like the other, I don't say half, but maybe third of the show is about the rest of the family. So there's a mom who is a horse surgeon, and I love the fact that
No, she's not just a horse surgeon, she's a horse heart surgeon.
Oh, okay. Very specific.
She has a focus on horse hearts.
Yeah, it's a very niche market.
It's a very, very niche market,
but
indeed.
I love how the hospital she works at is called St. Equus.
Yes.
Which is great.
Yeah. Well, there's just all kinds of little funny things like that in the show.
And then the dad is a advertising executive
Yeah, he works for a marketing company. He's voiced over by Chris Parnell,
from Saturday Night Live and Archer.
30 Rock.
And the mom is voiced by Sarah Chalk, who is from Scrubs.
Yes.
Right.
And then Rick and Morty are voiced over by the creator, Justin Roiland,
Right.
of the show.
And then he has an older sister, Summer.
I don't know who she's voiced by.
Yeah, I don't know.
Nobody
either.
notable.
But so like one of the problems, so like the show will go back and forth between what's going on with the family and then what's going on with Rick and Morty's adventures. And to show you, like, but sometimes they meet up in one story. But
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
for instance, in the pilot, because Rick has been taking Morty on so many adventures, he's been taking him out of school, so he's practically missed an entire semester. So one of the part of the pilot is about this smuggling this substance past these aliens, and the other part is the parents finding out about their son essentially being, taken out of school.
Basically a drug mule.
Yeah, he's basically a drug mule, but it's not for drugs. It's like for scientific experiments and things like that.
Yeah, so they go, this substance they're trying to get through is illegal, BT dub, which is why they're having a hard time getting it, smuggling it through. So they got the part, but to get it through customs, they had to shove it up Morty's butt.
Never a nice thing.
Never a nice thing. So like they're trying to run through aliens, and Rick was like, Morty, you gotta shove it right up your butt. Right up there. That's the quote. That's the quote. I'm not like trying to be outrageous. That's what they said.
And that's where you get sort of the immorality of Rick's actions. Is because he often claims that he's like the smartest guy in the world, and he doesn't need.
He is.
Yeah, he's very smart, and he doesn't need school and anything like that. But he's taking his grandson on these adventures, which is fun and interesting, and he gets to do a bunch of stuff, but it's also
him shove seeds up his butt.
Exactly, it's like highly dangerous.
Yeah. So knowing that Rick knows that this seed can kind of like mess with your health too if you keep it in too long.
Right, and this is the one that makes Marty even smarter than Rick, I believe.
Yeah.
And Marty is not smart at all.
No, Morty is like your stereotypical dumb 14-year-old. So like think of Mitchell at 14 if you knew him. That's basically Morty. So they go on their adventure, they smuggle it in there. It's great until the very end of the episode. Morty had the seeds in his butt for too long. It started to cause him to have like seizures.
Oh, right.
So he's on the ground having seizures, and the big running joke in the show is that all the characters, Rick and Morty, stutter a lot and they just babble. So Morty's having a seizure, and Rick's like, "Oh, we're going on an adventure. It's Rick and Morty and Rick going on an adventure, outer space. Yeah, I'm Rick and Morty and Rick." So he's babbling like that while his grandson Morty is having a seizure on the ground that was induced by having seeds up his butt.
Yeah.
So that was episode 1, more or less. It was okay.
It's okay. I think it's the weakest episode.
I'd give it maybe a 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
It's good, but I mean, most shows I find the pilots are just kind of aimless. Not aimless, but they still got to figure it out.
Right.
Like Parks and Rec season 1 is perfect example of that. Office season 1, perfect example. So instead of having like a whole season where they're aimless, I felt like Rick and Morty just had the first episode.
Yeah, I sort of feel like they should have started the show with a more, I don't know, carefree adventure. And I know that's not the point of the show. The show is where these adventures are highly stressful, especially for Morty and sometimes for Rick. But I sort of feel like that would have eased the audience into the premise a little bit.
I mean, compared to their other adventures, this one is pretty laid back.
Yeah, but you don't like, I feel like the concept of, being a drug mule isn't in itself funny. But in the next episode, there's an aspect of it where even though the situation is dire, the scenario is also funny.
It's a great scenario. So episode 2 is called Lawnmower Dog. So they have a dog. The family has a dog named Snuffles. He's like a cute little white dog.
It's adorable.
He wasn't very good at being house trained, so he peed in the house, and to like punish him, Jerry shoved his face in the urine in the carpet. Because why wouldn't you? So then, to help make the dog smarter, Rick made the dog a helmet. to like help boost his mental capacity. He only put 2 batteries in it out of maybe 5 or 6 battery slots.
Because that's how technology works.
Yeah, so by the logic of this helmet works, the more batteries you have in the helmet, the smarter the dog gets.
Well, and when they put the first battery or 2 in the dog's helmet, it starts using a toilet and, you know, picking up after itself and things like that. And of course, the family's very impressed.
Mm-hmm.
But then you can sort of see the dog becoming self-aware.
Yeah. Snuffles becomes self-aware. Then if he figures out if he puts more batteries in there, he's going to get smarter and smarter.
So like he eventually adds a robot arm to the helmet part.
Yeah. So you're getting ahead of yourself.
I am a little.
He gets all the batteries in there. Snuffles gets the ability to speak, and then he builds the arm. Then we learn Snuffles doesn't like the name Snuffles. He likes the name Snowball because his fur is white and fluffy. That was literally, that's the quote from the dog. So with this information, or this newfound mental capacity, the dog starts creating more helmets for more dogs.
Well, and what's going on during this is one of the rare episodes where Rick and Morty aren't the stars of this one, really. They kind of go off on their own adventure.
Yeah. So
and the main, what is that? I can't really remember what that part is.
Oh, that's when that was Scary Terry.
Right. It's kind of like they get into like an Inception kind of thing. Where
so the background to that is that Morty is not doing good in his math class. So they go to his, they try to Inception his math teacher into giving him a better grade. And then they meet this guy who's kind of like Freddy Krueger mixed with the male genitalia, to put it best. His name is Scary Terry. He calls everybody bitch.
Yeah.
That was probably my favorite part about that.
If you saw Deadpool, like his face kind of looked like Deadpool's face.
Yeah, exactly. So Scary Terry, he'd just walk around going like, yo, bitch. Or if it was like a term of endearment, he'd say, aw. But bitch.
We learned that Scary Terry, his family has he has a loving family. Is like he goes home like at the day at the office trying to kill people in their dreams, and he has like a loving wife, and I think he even has a pet, and you know.
Yeah. So the whole Rick and Morty storyline in this for the 2 characters is that they're trying to Inception their teacher while trying to escape Scary Terry.
Right.
But then they end up befriending Scary Terry. Because why wouldn't they?
And he helps them escape the Inception trap, and they get out.
Yeah.
But while all this is going on, Snuffles, which is now Snowball, has basically created an army of dogs with exosuits.
Yeah, more or less like dogs with like these big mecha exosuits, and they're trying to take over the world and make up for all the wrongs that humans have done to dog kind.
Right. So they start putting humans like in cages and on leashes, and the big threat, of course, is to neuter all the humans, just like humans neuter dogs.
Yeah, my favorite part about that is when Snowball first starts getting his sentience, then he goes into Summer's bedroom. He says, "Summer, where are my testicles?"
Oh yeah,
where are my testicles?
That's
Summer?
Right. But they eventually realize that the only way to save humanity is to remind Snowball/Snuffles how much he loves his human, who is Morty, because Morty was the only one who was truly nice to him when he was a regular dog.
Yeah. Yeah. So then, I think they go into Snuffles' dreams.
They
too,
do.
At one
yep.
point
It actually
the end.
does connect a little bit to that.
And then Snuffles rethinks his life. Then he ends up taking his dog army to another planet, and there's now a whole planet full of sentient dogs.
And I know a couple people that would rather live there.
So can I. Sorry, I was taking a sip of water.
Right.
So episode 3. What would you give episode 2 on a scale 1 to 10?
Maybe like an 8.5. That one, where I think if I had just let's say if I was watching the series live, if I had just seen the pilot, I would have been iffy if I would watch a second one.
Yeah, for sure.
But because I was watching it, I borrowed your Blu-ray. I saw the second one immediately, and I went, "Okay, no, I like this. I see where this is, where this can go. I like this." Because weird things are happening, but I'm smiling along. Like it's fun.
It's a very entertaining television show. Yeah, I'd probably give it about a 7 or 8 out of 10. It's not my favorite episode of the season. It's definitely up there though. So episode 3 was titled Anatomy Park.
And it's sort of a cross between the movie Fantastic Voyage, Jurassic Park and that episode of Futurama where Fry has those worms living in his in his intestines.
Yes. So this is actually considered the Christmas episode of the season too, believe it or not, because it takes place on Christmas, and they shrink themselves down to get inside of a homeless guy who's dressed up like Santa Claus.
Right, but the reason they want to get in there is that Rick and some of his associates have built a theme park built around human anatomy
Called Anatomy Park.
Right.
Hence the name.
Right. And John Oliver plays the sort of John Hammond type park
Did he
owner.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
like the guy who's like is in control of it is like a white blood cell.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's got like a whole gang of people who just help him run Anatomy Park.
And just like in Jurassic Park or any movies like that, they're trying to escape all the like some of the diseases have gotten loose from the body.
Yeah, like hepatitis got loose. A few others.
Others. And they're sort of they don't look like diseases, they look like big alien scary monster things.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like an action survival movie, but within the human body.
Yeah, it's basically Jurassic Park inside of a homeless guy dressed up like Santa.
Right.
And so the whole problem they have is that the homeless guy is dying. So they're trying to escape the homeless guy before he dies, because they will die too if they die and if he dies around them.
Mm-hmm.
So to solve that, they shoot him up into space and like make him giant.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
So there's a giant naked homeless Santa orbiting the Earth.
And this is the other aspect of the show that's really strange, is the world is fully aware of all the things that go on. And this is throughout the entire series, really. Like, the parents know the fact that, Rick is taking his grandson and then later grandchildren to multiple dimensions and different planets, and they are only mildly annoyed about it.
I mean, they're not great parents in retrospect.
Well, that's very true. But in this one, there are, newscast scenes like there are in lots of movies of, oh my gosh, there's a giant Santa that's floating in orbit and you can see it from the ground.
Like the head was over New York. The
Right.
no zone was over LA.
Right.
So they were like, oh, there is a giant penis in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to get out. So they they place a bomb inside of the giant Santa that's floating around space. And then they make it explode. So then all his blood and guts start raining all over the entire country.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
I thought it was great. I give it about an 8 out of 10.
Oh, really? See, that was one of my least favorite ones, I think.
I liked it because it was like a Jurassic Park hybrid.
Yeah, I liked that.
And then I liked the part when it was raining blood, because that reminded me of the Slayer song entitled Raining Blood. You don't listen to Slayer. They're a thrash metal band from the 80s.
Yeah.
They started around the same time as Metallica.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they homies with Metallica.
Oh, okay.
Think Metallica, but they like Satan.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so that's has nothing to do with it.
Tangent.
This podcast is nothing but a long tangent from Mark and Mitchell.
Right.
Episode 3 was M. Night Shyamalan's. Honestly, I did not like this episode.
Really?
It was probably my least favorite episode.
Huh. Oh, I kind of like this one, partly because David Cross is in it, who played Tobias in Arrested Development. And he played the lead alien in this one.
He did.
So basically the plot of this one is that there's these aliens that Rick says aren't the smartest species. And they're after him to get his recipe for dark matter to power their spaceships or something.
Wait, no, actually, I totally got this mixed up with a different episode.
Oh, okay.
I did like this one. Yeah.
Okay. And so what they end up doing is it's kind of like Inception in a way where actually it's more like a Star Trek The Next Generation episode, but where they sort of have captured Rick and Morty and they put them in this sort of holodeck situation, and they're trying to get Rick to tell them, but really someone else, how to make the dark matter recipe, essentially.
Yeah, so in this episode as well, there's Jerry stows away in Rick's little space saucer, So he's in this simulation as well.
Right. And like part of the simulation, of course, is trying to make you think that things are okay.
Mhm.
So in Jerry's fantasy world, basically he sells a successful Apple advertisement.
Hungry
and that's
for
not
apples?
Yeah, and that's not for computers, it's for the fruit.
Yeah, so it like his life gets great. He his marriage is automatically perfect now because Jerry and what's her face, Beth, they hate each other. So
Right.
in the simulation, their marriage is great. Jerry gets a bunch of promotions. So like I think that's how Rick and Morty realized that it wasn't real. Was that?
I think that's part of it. And there's
Yeah.
different layers where but it turns so like there's points where he thinks that he's escaped, but then it turns out he's still in the simulation. But then in the very end we learn that he was aware of it the entire time.
Yeah, he's totally just messing with the aliens.
And he gave them the wrong formula and they end up blowing up their own ship.
Yeah, so he gave him basically a recipe for a chemical bomb.
Right.
Good episode. I'd give it about a 7 out of 10.
Mhm.
What do you give it? Mike?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, better than average.
It's pretty funny. Hungry for Apples is a big inside joke between me and my sister. So, like that episode, we'll say Hungry for Apples. Episode 5 is my personal favorite. It's called Me Seeks and Destroy. So Jerry is trying to golf, and he's not very good at golfing. So Rick has this device called a Me Seeks box where you push the button. A little, or maybe a tall blue guy comes out.
He's like a genie, essentially.
Yeah, it comes out and you ask him to do one thing, then they help you do the one thing, then they automatically die.
Right. So let's say I needed to build a bookcase or fix my car. I could just hit the box and say, "Hey, Meeseeks, could you help me fix my car?"
You'd be like, Mr. Meeseeks, look at me, I'm gonna build a car.
Yeah, and they're very excitable and very friendly, and their whole purpose in life is to fulfill their purpose. So
then
they
die.
disappear essentially when it's done. So for instance, if I asked one of them to fix my car, as soon as my car is fixed, they poof.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, Jerry can't golf.
Right.
So the Mr. Meeseeks that came to help him is like getting old because Meeseeks usually don't live that long. But since Mr. Meeseeks wasn't fulfilling his task, he just stayed there. And then he got to the point where he couldn't do it, so he started summoning another Mr. Meeseeks, and they just kept summoning a bunch of Mr. Meeseeks to help Jerry.
Until there's like 100 of them.
At least 100 of them. So I think one of them said, "Oh man, Meeseeks aren't supposed to live this long. It's getting real weird."
Yeah, they get a little they go a little crazy.
Yeah, they get extremely violent, and they just kind of lose. They kind of like turn into like an insane asylum person almost.
Yeah, a little. And eventually they decide the only way that they can end their suffering is by killing Jerry.
Yeah, because if Jerry's not there.
But in a nice twist, which does happen in the show, that it does have a little heart in it too, because basically at one point, Jerry's wife Beth basically helps him with his golf swing, and
while they're being hunted by all the Mr. Meeseeks.
Right, and they're hiding in like a restaurant's like freezer or something.
Yeah.
And then they go out and literally swinging the golf club, and they defeat the Meeseeks, and
all of them disappear but one.
Oh, I forgot about that.
The one said, "I'm a stickler for your putter, Jerry."
Oh, that's right. I forgot about
then
that.
Jerry had to like put like an onion into a soup container or something.
Right.
And then that made him go away because he was satisfied with Jerry's putting game.
And then the B side of this story is so Morty is always highly stressed out by all their adventures. And so he finally decides, okay, you have to allow me to choose how we're going to do an adventure, and I'm going to show you how you can do an adventure that isn't horrifying and awful. And so what they decide to do is they end up in this world, which is sort of like your typical like fantasy.
It's like a Jack and the Beanstalk kind of thing.
Like a Jack and the Beanstalk thing. They find this village where all their stuff is being stolen by a giant. And so they climb the beanstalk to defeat the giant. And eventually the giant sees them in his kitchen. He walks up, slips on something, bangs his head on the table, and dies.
So Rick and Morty get blamed for that death.
Right. And they go to giant trial. But they get off on a technicality. basically like the giant version of the ACLU like comes to their rescue.
Yeah.
And they eventually get out.
Yeah, so they get acquitted.
Right.
So then they go to a bar, and Morty's like, he's like, no, we're gonna still do more adventures, Rick. Look, come on, let's go. And this whole time, Rick's like, come on, dude, let's just go home. So Morty goes to the bathroom.
Yeah.
It gets a little sad at this point, not gonna lie.
Well, long story short, he meets somebody in the bathroom who he shouldn't have.
Yeah, so that's King Jellybean. He's kind of like the head of the whole beanstalk thing.
Right.
He kind of may or may not try to rape Morty.
Right. So yeah. It gets dark.
It gets very dark. It got dark fast. It escalated very quickly. Was not expecting that part to happen. So then that's what makes Morty decide he wants to go home, and then he just doesn't like being in charge of the adventures.
Well, they eventually Rick wins a bunch of money from the other people in the bar by playing poker.
Oh, that's right.
And they bring the money back to the townspeople. And so they do actually sort of save the day because they prevented the townspeople from being robbed and they helped them out with money.
They did save him from King Jellybean, which it's definitely a good thing.
Yeah, and the giants too.
Ain't nobody gonna mess with King Jellybean. So yeah, this is my favorite. I'd give it a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I don't know if I think if they the whole bathroom part bothered me.
Yeah, I did not enjoy it.
But I feel like they could have gotten to the same place with a little less disturbing aspect.
That's why it isn't a 10 out of 10 for me. The bathroom scene I did not enjoy either. Actually, I wasn't big on the whole Rick and Morty adventure side of it. I really like Mr. Meeseeks.
Yeah, and the concept of a being that just lives to help you for one little task and then disappears is interesting. So.
Yeah, so I like the Mr. Meeseeks aspect of it. I wasn't super big on the whole Morty leading an adventure. It was okay. But yeah, Mr. Meeseeks, that was the character that shined throughout all that.
And then the next episode is called Rick Potion Number 9. And this is sort of a case where this is another theme in the series where they have a normal real world problem. Think back to the dog that wasn't potty trained and then it went out of control. In this one, there is a is it middle school dance? Anyway,
it's Morty's high school dance.
Okay,
it's
high school dance.
It's like his homecoming or whatever.
Okay, yeah, some high school dance. And Morty wants to ask his crush out, and he's all worried about it, and he doesn't think that he has a chance. And so Rick, who barely has time for Morty's problems, invents this like love potion to make Morty's crush fall in love with him. But because
the kicker for that is that if the person has the flu, it makes the whole love portion for Morty contagious to anybody who catches said flu.
Right. And it not only does it become contagious, it like turbocharges it. So they don't just go, oh, I love Morty. They will kill anyone that they think can take Morty away from them. Yeah. Like they become like violent and crazy about their affections for Morty.
Yeah, so that was pretty funny. So then this episode is basically Rick and Morty trying to save everybody from it.
Right. And then each of Rick's solutions keep causing more problems. Like it starts turning people into praying mantises.
Yeah.
And then
they call him Kronberg.
Well, that's the third phase. So the first phase, they're just all crazy in love with Morty. Then the second phase, they become praying mantises.
Oh, that's
And then the last one, they become sort of like gooey Jabba the Hutt looking crazy.
Very gelatinous creatures.
Yeah.
So this episode kind of does get a little dark too. This love potion kind of destroys all of humanity and society in this dimension.
Yeah.
So instead of like saving it, Rick and Morty go to a different alternate universe they kill that universe as Rick and Morty, and then they take the then they just replace Rick and Morty in a different world and just live their lives seamlessly.
Well, and then Rick makes Morty bury himself.
Yeah, they have to like kill themselves. They're like not like a suicide. They have to like kill the alternate versions of themselves. And
well, wait a minute. No, actually, they don't kill themselves. They go to an alternate universe where the stuff that they just did never happened.
Yeah.
But then something else killed them at the same time. Like, I think you see the alternate Rick and Morty like working on a device, and then the device, something goes wrong, and they just fall down dead.
So then they have to bury themselves and just take the place. That's really dark when you think about it.
It's really dark. But again, what I kind of like about this show is that it's called back later, and we'll talk about it then, and it's a nice, heartwarming kind of moment.
Yeah, a cool thing about the show is that you can watch it out of order if you want, but especially seasons 1 and 2, there's not a whole lot of like continuity, big picture wise or small picture, but like there's little things that will just keep happening.
Yeah,
like
you
that.
pick up on it.
Yeah, for sure. So out of 10, what would you give it?
I don't know. I like this one. I'd say like a 7.5.
Yeah, I'd give it about
or
that.
8.
I'd give it about that too. No, I wouldn't go for an 8. So this next one, this one was my least favorite. It's called Raising Gazorpazorp. So this one, Rick and Morty it starts off in a pawn shop.
In like space or an alternate dimension
so
kind of thing.
Morty found a sex robot and he wanted Rick to buy it for him. So he was like, Rick, I want this robot, Rick. We go on so many adventures, Rick. And I never get any souvenirs. Can I get this souvenir? I don't think he realized it was a sex robot.
I don't think he did either.
Until Rick gave in, he's like, okay, we're gonna get this
because it has like 2 modes. One, it looks like a giant floating orb, sort of picture like a BB-8 that flies.
Yeah,
and then in its other mode, it looks like a woman robot.
Yeah. So then they get it. Morty, being a 14-year-old, uses it.
And eventually,
we will let the listener fill in the cracks with that one. We're trying to keep it as kid friendly as we can here.
And then, go ahead.
So Morty has a baby with it,
but an alien baby, because it's shaped like a human kind of, but bulkier, and it has sort of red splotches all over it, and different arms. Yeah.
So. I'm trying to remember what the Gazorp. Yeah, I don't think they had a lot of men in that society.
Well, then they eventually. Oh, the other part of it is that Summer, who is Morty's sister, convinces Rick to take her on an adventure with him, and their plan is to go to the planet where the robot is from to try to figure out what to do with this alien kid.
So it was interesting that Summer was on the adventure instead of Morty.
And from the one episode of season 3 I saw, it looks like that's going to happen more often.
Yeah, I think so too. People liked that, so it's cool. And a little thing in there during that Summer never wore yellow throughout the whole show. But when she replaced Morty in the episode, she was wearing a yellow shirt.
Oh, right.
Because Morty has a yellow shirt and blue pants on. So when she was adventures with Rick, they always have her in a yellow shirt.
Oh.
Yeah, see, that's like one of those little things you just gotta pay attention to, or else you don't catch.
Okay.
So while Morty's raising this alien baby called Morty Jr., Summer and Rick are trying to.
They're trying to figure out where this alien needs to go. And eventually they find out that the alien robot is from this planet where
Gazorpazorp.
Right. Where the women live separately from the men, and the women live in sort of idyllic, futuristic society, and the men are like sort of cavemen on this planet. And they sort of have adventures there, and eventually they arrest Rick for farting because that is illegal in this female-dominated society.
Because it's not very ladylike, apparently.
Apparently.
Everybody farts.
I think there's a book about that.
No, that's Everybody Poops.
And I think there's a sequel called, I'm pretty sure.
I mean, we work at a library. We would know.
But anyway, eventually they escape from this planet and go home. And Morty, in the meantime, realizes that his son is hell-bent on just violence because the men from this alien planet have sort of been bred just to be, savages.
Yes. So then they eventually have to do they have to kill him? I can't remember.
No.
I haven't watched this I admittedly have not watched this episode in a little bit.
So what eventually happens is this kid grows up from a baby to like a 30-year-old within the case of like a week or a couple days. Like it's really short.
Yeah. So then they're
well eventually what happens eventually what happens is Morty Jr. Rebels against his father and goes out to try to fight and kill things, but then Morty gives him this nice speech about no, you have to decide what you want to do and you can't hurt people and this and this and that, and then it sort of skips to the future where Morty Jr. is in like a Meet the Press interview and he's talking about his novel that he wrote about his father.
Yeah, so it's just called Meet My Horrible Father.
Yeah, and then it kind of just ends.
Yeah, so I didn't really like that episode, hence me not remembering anything about it.
Yeah, it's not one of the better ones.
4 out of 10.
But the next one I really liked.
Oh, yeah. The next one is called 60 Minutes. So this is probably the most relatable episode to just the public in general. The Smith family was watching The Bachelor. Rick did not like The Bachelor. He was just dissatisfied and pissed off with the quality of Earth television and cable. So he builds this box that he sets up to his cable box that gives them TV channels from every conceivable dimension around the entire universe. So their channel options are essentially limitless.
Yeah, and so like there's one where it just is this advertisement for this for this store which only sells fake doors.
Yeah, was that the one with Ants in My Eyes Johnson?
Yo, no, that's Ants in My Eyes.
Oh, and yeah, so there's this guy named Ants in My Eyes Johnson who's running around. He's got ants crawling around inside of his eyes. He's like, I'm Ants in My Eyes Johnson. We got all these deals. I can't see them. I got ants in my eyes, but I can tell you they're there.
Yeah, and it's all these weird things. But then kind of the strangest thing that they come upon is Jerry, who is, remember, Morty's father. He's a celebrity. He's like a big time actor. And so it turns out that in this the universe where this TV show is from, Jerry is this big time success and celebrity.
Yeah, and then that makes Rick create like a VR headset for Beth and Jerry to see.
No, that's a different one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's a different one.
I apologize, good people.
So
no, that's this one.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm reading the description right now.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Mark,
Sorry.
Mark. So yeah, that leads Rick to build like a VR headset, so Jerry and Beth can see what their lives would be if they never had kids.
Right, and it gets kind of a big downer here because throughout the entire season, they played the whole fact that Jerry and Beth have a very unhappy marriage, or at least a rocky one.
Well, I mean, they're staying together for the kids, more or less.
Right.
So they're just like trying to see what their lives were like out there, and then Summer, of course, gets upset, understandably so. So, but the good thing about it is that they're more into their different lives of Beth and Jerry being successful. They get into the more they realize how unhappy they would have been. It's like Jerry becomes like a drug addict.
Well, what eventually you see is they see like a O.J. Simpson style chase scene where Jerry, the successful Jerry, the movie star Jerry, is being chased by the cops.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, and Jerry's all upset, like, oh man, the one universe where I was on top, I've fallen down. But then what eventually happens is the TV cameras see him and he stops at that universe's Beth's house. And he says, after all of my success, the one thing I regret is that I was never with you, with Beth. And, it's an awe moment.
Yeah, so it's like happy ending. They might not be super satisfied, but they are happier than they would be if they got what they wanted.
Right.
So, yeah, that was pretty good. I'm trying to... What did Rick and Morty do?
That one was kind of... They didn't. They just watched... They mostly just watched...
I feel like they were just watching... Was that show they were watching? I want to say it was... It was like that They're watching like an action show with a funny name.
Oh, no. That was the one with it had a trailer that just kept going.
Yeah.
And it was about like two brothers who were fighting an alien invasion and a tornado. And like it just kept building and building and building.
Like
and building.
that's like legit what the name was, like two brothers fighting a tornado in space with a helicopter.
Yeah. It was sort of like making fun of like Sharknado kind of things.
Yeah, so that was actually a really good episode.
Yeah, it's sort of, yeah, it has an overarching plot, but it has a lot of these little vignettes of the different TV shows and commercials and things. So it's sort of like real quick jokes one after the other.
Yeah, so I'd give it like an 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
Episode 9 was called Something Wicked This Way Comes. So this was one of Mark's favorite episodes, if I remember right.
Yeah, and this one is kind of summer centric, but also Morty and Jerry centric too. So the two plot lines are basically Morty has to do a science project, and Jerry convinces him to help him do it and not his, evil scientist grandfather. And they get into an argument over whether Pluto is a planet. Which of course it is not. And so
it's a planet in my heart,
and that means nothing.
Okay, we're gonna have a debate about this in a future episode.
Okay, we can do that.
So just totally ADD moment.
All right.
Future upcoming on the Mathom House podcast, is Pluto a planet?
It's not.
Anyway,
so they eventually get sort of abducted by the people living on Pluto, the Plutonians, I guess. And Jerry is seen as a hero because he is fighting against this idea that Pluto isn't a planet. But it turns out that this whole story is an allegory for the climate change debate. And I'm putting debate in quotation marks.
Because it should actually, we're not going to get too political on this podcast, but climate change is a thing.
Right.
It's real.
Yeah. And so basically what happens is the reason they're making Jerry their hero for saying Pluto is a planet is because Pluto has been shrinking because they've been mining this stuff from the planet. I think it might even be plutonium.
That's what my notes are saying.
Right. And so they're using Jerry's declaration that Pluto's a planet as sort of propaganda to fight against people who are saying that there's a problem with mining the planet until it collapses. But then the other part of the show, which is the part I really liked, is that Summer gets a job working for this sort of creepy guy who owns like a pawn shop kind of antique store.
He's actually the devil.
But yeah, it turns out that he's a devil.
Oh, you were getting there.
Yeah. And it like and Rick figures this out because he sees like, oh, if you get this typewriter, you write really good stories. You write murder mysteries. But it turns out that whenever you write a murder mystery, someone dies. And sort of, that whole like, devil thing of where if you get one good thing, it causes a even worse thing to happen.
Yes, like you don't buy anything from the pawn shop. You just get like a curse put on you instead.
Right. And he gets annoyed. Basically, Rick gets annoyed with the devil. And so he decides to launch a business where people happily buy these cursed products and then he uncurses them.
Yeah, so he like sets up shop like right across the street.
Right, and he's making like a ton of money, and and Summer and the devil are very upset about this.
Yeah, because of course Satan's sad when you take away his curses.
Right. Oh, and the devil's played by Alfred Molina, who I love. He's really cool.
Who is that for us who don't know him?
He was Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man 2.
Oh, the Doctopus.
He was also in Chocolat. He's been in a lot of things.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, I would give that episode a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I would rate it a little higher. I think 8.5 or 9. That's one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, it was okay. I did like the Plutonian aliens. If you are on a computer listening to this, Google them. I get a kick out of them.
They're like real short.
Episode 10. This is a good episode that actually does set a lot up for future episodes, because this episode it's called Close Encounters of Rick Kind. It introduces it goes more in depth to the concept of different universes having different Ricks and Mortys.
Right, and this sort of has continuity with previous episodes, and I'm guessing with future ones.
Yeah, this actually becomes a fairly big part in the future, like the whole different dimensions. There's an episode in season 2 where they go on an adventure, but Jerry stows away again, so they drop him off at a daycare just for Jerry's. So we'll talk about that another day. That this one, the Rick that we know is wrongfully convicted of killing 27 other Ricks from 27 different dimensions. So there's this whole council of Ricks that are there.
They're like the Green Lantern Corps of Ricks.
It's kind of, almost like an Illuminati kind of.
Oh yeah, that
like
too.
an Illuminati of Ricks. I can't even say this with a straight face. It's so funny. So they're like trying to like have a trial for him and like convict him of murdering 27 other Ricks. So the goal of this is to figure out who's killing these Ricks,
right?
Which is pretty good. It turns out Rick was framed by not another Rick, but a Morty.
Dun dun dun.
But not just any Morty. There is one Morty that is evil.
Right. Well, and that's another thing, is that you find out in this one that the main reason why Rick takes Morty with him is not because he likes him or needs him, like in a sense of, hey, you're helping with my adventure. It's because Rick has many enemies and his basically super intelligence can be scanned. But because Morty is so dumb, it cancels out that signal, so he can't be tracked.
Yeah, so Morty's essentially there just as like a stealth suit.
Yeah, I guess so.
About it. But, I do think there is a small part in Rick that does enjoy taking Morty with him.
But, this one had a little twist in it that surprised me. Like, I know the twist ending at the end is that, like, evil, smart Morty was the villain. But it also introduces, Doofus Rick, who
Rick.
The other Ricks make fun of because he's not as smart as they are, but he's a lot nicer.
Yeah, so Doofus Rick, just paint a mental picture, has, instead of having like the crazy spiky hair, he has a bowl haircut, like big front teeth, and all the Ricks are at the Smith house trying to like figure out who killed all the Ricks. So the Doofus Rick is there. He doesn't talk to the other Ricks. He makes friends with Jerry.
Right, and I thought for a while that Doofus Rick was actually the one behind it all.
Yeah, because that's what they wanted you to think, though.
You're probably right.
Yeah, I feel like they were trying to lead it up to make Doofus Rick the thing, but they ended up flipping it and having Evil Morty as.
Do you know what I just realized?
What?
Rick has his haircut looks like Lisa Simpson's.
Oh my god, it does.
Doesn't it?
Yes. This is a really good episode. I would give it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's pretty funny, and it has sort of fun action in it.
All right, so final episode, season 1, is called Rixie Business. So this episode is Beth and Jerry love the Titanic.
Well, Jerry does.
Jerry loves the Titanic, so him and Beth go on like a Titanic themed cruise.
Right.
At the end, like it crashes and like they're trying to relive the movie on there.
And it has all these, people that go to it sort of cosplay as characters from the 19-teens, and they get and eventually in line on the deck, and there's a huge line for people to reenact the, I'm king of the world part, or the part where Rose and Jack, go on the bow too. And but basically Beth is all fed up with it, so she suggests that Jerry does this with an employee of the park who is a maid.
Yeah, so and then the maid falls in love with Jerry. And another thing that we do not endorse in this podcast is that she tried to rape Jerry.
Kinda, yeah. She wanted to be his Rose.
She was real. She would have if she could have.
Well, yeah, like
she was like forcing herself on.
No,
him,
I know. But like she wanted him to draw her like one of his French girls, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And hang out in a Model T, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So while all that's happening, this sets up the good part of the episode. Jerry and Beth are gone for a weekend. That means Rick is in charge.
Which is a bad thing.
Yeah, so since Summer's like, woohoo, no parents, we're gonna have a party. So she throws a party.
Like a stereotypical high school movie party.
Like every 16-year-old would do when the parents are gone. But Rick invites a bunch of his friends to the party too.
And so like a bunch of aliens and monsters and things like that show up.
So my favorite was the man. There's like this big guy who's like maybe like a acrylic dude filled with gears.
Oh yeah.
The gear man. So,
He looks like a lame toy robot that you got for 50 cents somewhere.
actually, he comes back in season 2.
Oh, okay.
So look forward to that. But my favorite line from that show is Morty goes up to him just to make small talk, and the Gearman's like, "Morty, what do you know about the Gear Wars?" And Morty was like, "I don't know, nothing." And the guy was like, "Oh, how I envy you." And he just started talking about the war of his people. Then there's this like weird squirrel named Squanchy.
I don't remember that.
He was the guy who was squanching in the closet. That's the word I was looking for.
Oh, okay. I know what you mean.
Yeah, so it's a verb. We're not going to go into detail about that.
Well, my favorite character that shows up, and I'm assuming he's like a superhero that Rick knows. I don't know. Who knows?
It's Bird Person, right?
Yeah, his name is Bird Person, and he kind of looks like a guy dressed up like in a Hawkman costume.
No, that's just his race. He's a person.
Well, I know, but that's what he looks like.
Yeah. So actually, we'll do a little season 2 spoiler. It's not too big. So Rick and Bird Person know each other because they fought in a war together.
Oh, okay.
So like Rick and Bird Person were war heroes. So take that how you will.
Okay, but Bird Person is very like stoic and wise, which is very different from Rick.
Yeah, if anybody here knows Mark, listening knows Mark, Bird Person is actually a lot like Mark. It's great.
That makes me a little worried.
No, Bird Person's one of my favorites. So they're having a big party, and then alternate Rick, or one of the Ricks, accidentally made, or not, he intentionally made this. It's a combination of Abraham Lincoln and Adolf Hitler.
And his goal was to create a morally neutral leader.
He said the world's most neutral world leader.
Yeah.
So they called him Aberdolf Linkler. So during this whole party, they get transported to another world, and they needed more fuel to get back home. Rick didn't care. He's partying. He's doing like the Rick dance or whatever. Yeah, it's the Rick dance. That was the song. So,
oh, that's right.
So Aberdolf Linkler and Morty go to get more fuel. I'm sorry, it's so great. And then, like Linkler seemingly sacrifices himself for Morty.
Yeah. He actually becomes better than the sum of his parts.
Yeah, exactly. He is not the world's most neutral leader. He leans a little toward the good side.
Yeah, he does.
So then, they get home. As they get back, Beth and Jerry are walking up.
Right.
Which is bad because the house is like all torn apart. So they freeze time and start cleaning it up.
Right. And the three of them, but you see them like going on other little adventures, like they're having a good time. They're not hurrying, cleaning it all up.
Yeah, time's frozen. So in season 2's premiere, they reveal that they froze time for 3 months.
Right.
So.
And remember that Rick and Morty are alternate universe Rick and Morty.
Yeah, it gets a little confusing with all the alternate universes. So it ends with them trying to clean everything up. And that's how it ended, right?
Yeah, it just kind of ends.
Yeah, so it picks up in season 2 like right where season 1 leaves off.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like season 2 picks up with Beth and Jerry walking in.
And they don't remember what happened?
No, they know what happened.
Oh, okay.
Because they were frozen. They saw the house being all trashed, and then they're all confused because it looks all good. And then it was like, whatever.
Okay.
So that was Rick and Morty season 1.
Well, I think we should talk about just briefly things that we like about the series and things that we don't.
Yeah. So, Mark, what did you like about it?
I like that it's sort of this odd combination of comedy, crazy adventure, and then heart. Like there's this one of the episodes where Summer basically learns that she was an accident, and so she decides that she's going to leave, and she's only 17 or 16 or something.
That was the episode with the TV.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And Morty goes up to Summer's room and he begs her not to leave, and he points out the window and says, you know what, Summer, you can't leave because I don't know if you know this, but my body is buried 20 feet from the house. and I'm an alternate universe version of me, and I don't know how I would handle that without you being there.
Yeah, it's definitely a heartfelt show when it wants to
Yeah,
be.
and that's what I like about it, is that it doesn't have a consistent tone in the other than things, just crazy things happening.
Mhm.
But then it will surprise you where, oh, it's going to be really heartfelt and nice, or no, it's going to be crazy adventure, or no, it's going to be really raunchy. It sort of mixes it up.
Yeah, this is actually my favorite show right now. It's been my favorite show for maybe 2 years. I love it. It's got comedy, it's got good storytelling, and then like Mark said, it's got the heartfelt stuff. I like most of it. Like there's some episodes that just fall flat for me.
Oh yeah,
But
and
like that's every TV show though. You're not gonna
Sure.
adore everything. But for the most part, I really just adore this show. I had a knee surgery recently. And when I was recovering, I literally watched the whole series within maybe 36 hours. Because like I couldn't walk. So all I was do is just watch Rick and Morty. It was great. Like even just personally, Rick and Morty is just it's I got a special spot for it.
it helped you heal.
It helped heal my knees. And when I have my second knee surgery, it's gonna help me again.
Aw.
So do you have anything else you'd like to say about our friends Rick and Morty?
No, just looking forward to season 2.
All right, so we are going. Season 2 is going to be great. I'm going to get the DVD for you eventually, and we'll watch it.
Yes.
Cool. So that was Rick and Morty season 2. We are going to take a quick break, enjoy the wonderful music that I've created, and we will be right back. And we're back.
We're back.
We missed you all very much.
I didn't. Mitchell did.
I did, because I'm a good person. It was a whole maybe 17 seconds without you hearing our voices.
It was an eternity.
That's a really good song I wrote, though.
I haven't even heard it yet.
Oh, man, dude. He doesn't even listen to his own podcast. Mark, you suck.
I want to point out that Sir Alec Guinness would never watched any movies he was in.
Do you know how many times I listened to the first one?
How many?
Like 8.
Holy crap.
Not
Okay.
all the way through, but I edit these as well.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I heard us talk a lot.
I'm sorry.
I got sick of us. But it's a great podcast. I don't want you guys to get sick of us, so keep listening. So, second topic of the day.
Our second topic of the day is the KPG Extinction event.
What is that for us stupid people who don't know what that is?
You're not stupid, Mitchell.
I'm smart.
Sure.
That's what my associate's degree told me.
Right. So, in a nutshell, the K-PG Extinction event is popularly known as, I'm putting this in quotation marks, the thing that killed the dinosaurs.
Why are you putting it in quotation marks?
Because it's misleading in several ways.
How is it misleading?
Number one, it killed a whole lot of other things. It didn't just cause the dinosaurs to go extinct. And secondly, and most importantly, dinosaurs aren't extinct. So the name doesn't quite fit.
So why do they say dinosaurs are extinct if you claim they aren't?
Because
you are the only person I have ever met or heard say that dinosaurs are not extinct.
Well, that is because birds are a group of theropods, and theropods are dinosaurs. So birds are dinosaurs, and thus dinosaurs are not extinct.
That seems like a technicality to me.
It is not a technicality.
Why is it not a technicality?
So the technicality would be, let's say you had a company, okay? Let's just say General Motors, okay?
That's what I was thinking of, too,
okay,
actually.
General Motors, and this actually works. So there are multiple brands within General Motors, right? You know, there's Chevy and, you know, GMC and Buick and Cadillac, right?
Yes.
Well, there also used to be Pontiac and Oldsmobile and Saturn, okay? So that's like saying Pontiac, Saturn, and Oldsmobile.
Wait, Saturn isn't a thing anymore?
No.
Oh, that's sad.
So, you know, Pontiac, Saturn, and Oldsmobile are extinct, right? But that doesn't mean General Motors is gone.
So
Does that make sense?
I guess. I don't like your logic, but I'm going to go with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I could play devil's advocate here and tell you you're wrong. I don't know enough
but
about
then you would be wrong.
I don't know enough about the topic to do that.
And spoiler, that might be a future topic.
The cars?
No. Why that is true.
Why, the dinosaurs?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm down for that.
Okay, so that will be a future topic. But anyway, back to the KPG Extinction event.
What year did this happen?
Well, that's a good question. So it happened around 66 million years ago at the end of the Cretaceous period.
Okay.
And that goes into why it has the name it does. So think back to chemistry class. I know you don't want to, but just think about it.
Don't make me go back there.
Remember your periodic table? Remember how, they would take, a long word, for, like helium or something like that, or hydrogen, and then just turn it into H, right?
Yeah.
So you could write it in shorthand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, geology is like that too. So different periods of the Earth, different time periods are shorthanded into different things. So for instance, Cretaceous starts with a C, but it's shorthanded into a K. And the reason is,
I was about to ask, like, why?
The reason is there's a period that takes place quite a long time before the Cretaceous called the Cambrian, which starts with a C.
So that's why they had to make the new one K.
Right. It's just using a replacement. And then Paleogene is P lowercase g because there's another period which is called the Permian.
Not because it's kid friendly?
No, not because it's kid friendly. Haha. So the Paleogene is done with PG. So think of it like a border. You're calling it the KPG Extinction event, right?
Mm-hmm.
We live in southeastern Michigan, right?
Yes.
The Detroit River is the barrier between Detroit and Windsor, the city across the river, plus Michigan and Ontario, plus the United States and Canada, right?
Yeah.
So you would call the Detroit River the United States-Canada boundary.
As we do,
right? So that makes sense. So you're just calling it by the date of when it happened.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was it?
So basically what happened is a lot of life on Earth died out. Estimates reach around 75% of all life on Earth going extinct, dying.
That'll happen sometimes.
It does, and it's happened 5 or 6 times where huge percentage of the world's life just suddenly goes extinct. Though suddenly in geologic terms is relative. It wasn't just all in one day, but in a relatively short period of time.
Okay.
Think of like a depression or an economic collapse. People lose their jobs all the time. Businesses go out of business all the time. But when you have a lot of that concentrated in a short period of time, you call that a Great Depression or, the Panic of 1898 or something like that. You would, or like the problems that we had in 2008 and 2009.
The Great Recession.
The Great Recession, exactly.
I felt very recessed during that time.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah, no, another topic. Probably not. I don't want to talk about that.
Right. So, that's what mass extinctions are. There are when there's always a background noise of extinctions going on all the time. And there's also new species.
Like the dodo bird.
Yes, that was caused by us. But yes, things go extinct all the time. But just like, again, people lose their jobs all the time. But it's only a mass problem when it happens on a huge scale.
Yes.
So for instance, 75% of all life on Earth. And that not is just in numbers. So like we're not counting the number of trees. It's species and genera.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of hides how bad it was. So for instance, let's say you have one species which is extremely common, goes extinct, but a species which is very rare does not.
Okay.
It's a lot more things died, even just if you had 1 and 1, right? 1 lived, 1 died. If something is far more common, that's going to be much bigger of a problem than if one rare thing still was around.
Okay.
Think of like if all the McDonald's went out of business versus all the Sonics. Yes. There's a lot more McDonald's than there are Sonics.
I think I'd be more sad if Sonic went out of business, though.
Probably, but you get my point.
Because Sonic is so much better than McDonald's.
Yeah, you're right.
All right. So what lived and died during this?
Okay. So, first of all, we'll go over the things that completely disappeared. One of the saddest things that died were the pterosaurs. So these are things that the public unfortunately calls pterodactyls, which isn't a real word.
Well, why does the public call them that if it's not a real word?
Because there is a famous species of pterosaur that is called Pterodactylus.
Oh.
And so that was one of the very first ones that was discovered in the 19th century. So that just sort of became a general word, but the term pterodactyls means absolutely nothing scientifically. So it's not a real word.
But it is technically it's a real word. That should be playing devil's advocate though.
Yeah, I know.
So pterosaurs.
Yeah, so
What
pterosaurs are those things that are often shown alongside non-avian dinosaurs. There are the flying reptiles that you see with sort of like bat-like wings that are formed not with feathers, but with skin in between their arms and their legs. So those went completely extinct. And a lot of marine reptiles went extinct. So these are your plesiosaurs and your mosasaurs. So plesiosaurs are, again, think of your stupid thing, like the Loch Ness Monster type thing. Those large...
Are you calling Nessie stupid?
I'm calling them that it doesn't exist.
Okay. We're going to have a future podcast, Nessie. Anyway, go.
Oh, geez. So, marine reptiles with long necks and 4 paddles, that swam through the ocean. And mosasaurs are a similar group, but instead of a long neck with a tiny head, think of like a big crocodile-like head. If you saw Jurassic World, that big sea creature that was way too big.
The dude that just like jumped out of the water toward the end?
Right. Mosasaur is similar to that.
I like that dude.
Yeah. Yeah. So those went extinct. Couple other things. Ammonites went extinct, which were a group. Basically, have you ever seen fossils that are sold at like a antique shop or alongside of a beach or something like that?
Yes, I have.
And all those little like cool shell like things? That ammonites belong to that kind of group.
Okay.
And they had existed for over 100 million years before that, and they went extinct. They were very common. They went out.
The bang?
Literally with a bang, as you'll see.
We'll see.
But then just a wide cross section of a whole bunch of other things. 60% of corals died off.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Even some insects died off, and actually very few mass extinctions are linked to insects dying. Yeah, probably like individual species die, but not large numbers.
Yeah, you don't really hear
groups.
about a lot of insects just kicking the bucket.
No, and we'll also talk about why that is, because it's linked to what survived this event.
All right.
A lot of snails and mussels, many different kinds of mammals, many different kinds of crocodiliforms, and you can probably tell by that name they are relatives of crocodiles and alligators. It's just the larger group name.
Okay. That's cool.
And actually, birds almost went extinct. This is the crazy thing. So, when birds diverged from theropod dinosaurs, there were multiple different large groups of birds, and only one of those groups made it across the boundary.
Really?
So, yeah, so birds almost went extinct. We almost lost dinosaurs completely. Luckily, we didn't.
Dude, I love birds. I'm glad they didn't go away.
I know, right? And then a bunch of mammal groups died off too. And so basically the whole cross section of life on Earth had a very, very bad time.
I can tell.
Yeah. And as what survived, as I said, they have the group of modern birds, aves. So avian, term from avian.
Which is why you call birds non-avian dinosaurs.
Exactly. And actually one of the groups that survived the best were amphibians.
Really?
Yeah, and one of the reasons why we think this is that amphibians are dependent upon streams and rivers and ponds, and those communities are less susceptible to the kind of impacts, literally and figuratively, that the extinction event had. So amphibians did relatively okay. And that's actually, so that brings us back to another thing. Basically, the things that survived were generalists. So no pure herbivores, so plant-eating animals, and no pure carnivores survived. So it was all things like omnivores. Think of like a raccoon. You know, they'll eat anything.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
I watched a raccoon eat a donut last weekend.
See, there you go. They'll eat anything.
I mean, yeah, my mom gave a raccoon a donut and it ate it.
Mm-hmm. So, like, raccoons potentially could survive a mass extinction because they are generalists. They will eat anything. And then another thing is basically anything bigger than a cat died off.
Well, I'm glad my cats would have been okay.
Yeah, right? But a lot of things that were smaller than that died off too. But the point is anything that was large at all died off. And anything that needed a lot of time to reproduce or breed or grow or needed a large range died off. And this makes a lot of sense.
So we would have been just screwed over in that then.
Yeah. You know, think of things that would bounce back fast. So things that will eat almost anything,
Raccoons.
have a wide range across the landscape or the oceanscape, breed quickly, and are highly adaptable.
All right, so what I'm gathering from this is that raccoons are like super animals.
No, that's just an example.
I know, but I'm just
right. But if you think about what matches those criteria, two groups of animals meet that you can just think of offhand. Mice and rats.
Okay, so
small birds.
Okay, so like small rodents and birds would have been more likely to survive because they were more adaptable to things.
Well, I mean, just think about it. Like, you know, mice and rats breed like crazy.
Yes, they do.
They also breed quickly, which means they have a high generational turnover. So, you know, you're born with a whole bunch of your brothers and sisters, and then you can breed yourself and reproduce yourself soon after that. There's not these long, drawn-out periods, right?
Yeah, like what would happen with other mammals that take sometimes a year, sometimes more.
Well, think of like an elephant. Like an elephant has one kid at a time, one calf at a time, and it takes years for it to grow up to have yet another calf. It's slow to reproduce and replace itself. So animals like that are really vulnerable to extinction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, think of our friend the panda. It only eats one or two things. Well, that means it's really susceptible to extinction. But then go back to rats or a lot of birds. Think of like crows, for instance. They'll eat nuts. They'll eat worms. They'll eat all sorts of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Fruits and all sorts of stuff. So, and then the other thing is think of why birds could survive. If there's only little food where you are, you can literally fly into the air and go to somewhere else where things are better.
Yeah, they can just bounce whenever they want to. They have good means of transportation attached to them.
Right. And also birds reproduce quickly as well. You know, they usually have multiple eggs and they're breeding within another year or two. So they can survive and spread around. But anything which is slow and takes a lot of energy to reproduce or move around or survive is going to go extinct.
Alrighty. So what caused this?
No, so I think I want to bring up two really stupid theories first.
Can I bring up my theory?
Please
first?
do, because it'll probably be stupid.
It probably is stupid. You know how a lot of extinction events are unexplained?
Some of them are, yes.
I was reading up on it.
Uh-huh.
You know, when a star dies, it shoots off like a bunch of gamma radiation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what if that hits Earth spot on? That like wipes everything out.
Potentially.
So what if we got hit? Because I don't know. I know a lot of people say crater. I don't believe that.
Why don't you believe that?
Because I can see it doing a lot of damage. I mean, I guess the aftermath would be worse than the actual impact.
And we'll get in that. We'll get into that.
I like my theory better because I like radiation going off and just killing everything.
Yeah, I mean, that has been proposed. As far as I know, there isn't a lot of strong evidence for that.
Not so stupid, though, is it?
No, it's not as stupid. And then Also, you'd have to get into why certain, groups survived or didn't. And yes, luck is always a factor. But the two main theories that we'll talk about really fit what survived and what didn't. And of course, plus luck and, bad luck.
Is one of them going to be the meteor?
Yes.
Called it.
So now the bad theory. One of the most stupidest theories was the mammals ate all the eggs theory.
Is that like the official name of it?
No, but that's essentially what it is.
That sounds really stupid.
Yeah, it really is, because, no animals today survive by laying eggs.
I mean, my cat lays eggs, but I'm not sure he's a cat. Anyway.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the idea is, our brave and intrepid yet downtrodden, ancestors, the rodent equivalents of the Mesozoic and late Cretaceous ate all the dinosaur eggs. They're, huge reptilian oppressors. Well, just stop and think about that. That makes no sense.
That's even dumber than my idea.
Right. And especially since mammals actually, in a way, predate dinosaurs, and they lived long before the rise of dinosaurs. So if they were running around eating a bunch of eggs, dinosaur eggs, they would have been doing that for more than 150 million years before that.
So that's just that just does not seem very plausible to me, because that takes so long to just actually have an effect.
Right. And that just makes no sense, anyway. And then the other theory is called the dinosaurs suck theory.
Is that the official scientific name for it?
No, it isn't. But that's sort of the idea. Is that
this is the Mark theory, the Mark lingo, Mark lingo for the theory.
And you'll see this in a lot of old children's books where they'll say, like, the dinosaurs were doomed to die because they were slow or lazy or whatever it is.
Which is not false. False. Dinosaurs are cool. They weren't lazy.
No.
They ran around and did things.
No, yeah. And it's just ridiculous to suppose that a group that was extremely successful for as long as they have been, because they evolved in the Triassic where they were not the dominant group. They survived another mass extinction event between the Triassic and the Jurassic, went to dominate the Earth for more than 150 million years.
And then they went on to be in a park.
Then they had the second mass extinction event. They survived that. And then while they haven't dominated modern life in the Cenozoic, but count the number of birds you see and count the number of mammals you see.
It depends where you're at, but you generally will find more wild birds
a lot of
than
birds.
Wild mammals.
Well, this is another sort of tangent, but so everyone knows or should know that a lot of whales eat tiny little krill, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they swallow huge portions of water and they filter them out, right?
That's exactly what happened in Finding Nemo.
Like in Finding Nemo. There are seabirds that do the same thing.
Like the pelican.
Kind of, yes.
Like the pelican.
Sure.
Say yes, Mark.
Which is also in Finding Nemo. But basically, the point is, if you took all the whales that do that and you put them on a scale, they would weigh a certain amount, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you took all the birds that live that similar lifestyle that feed off that same food source, the birds would outweigh the whales.
Wow.
Now, it takes a lot more birds, of course, because birds are small and don't weigh a lot. But the point is, birds are actually more successful at using that resource to survive than whales are.
I mean, I feel like birds are more efficient than whales at a lot of things, though.
Well, yeah. But the point is just an example that the dinosaurian line is alive and well. Mm-hmm. And so to call them failures is ridiculous.
No, I feel like dinosaurs are one of the more successful dominant species we've had.
Well, I mean, not species, but group, yes.
Arguably the most.
In some ways, I would say the most, other than insects, because they have been around with such dominance or secondary dominance for so long.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, those are the dumb theories.
What are the smart Mark theories?
Well, these aren't my theories. These are a lot of, hundreds of scientists around the world have been working on this for a long time. and we're very certain we know what happened. In fact, this is one of the most studied things in paleontology and geology, is this event.
It's a pretty big one.
Yeah. So the main event is called the Chicxulub impact. Yeah, I know it's a funny word, but when you find out where the name comes from, it'll make sense.
I mean, yeah, enlighten my immature mind about that.
So the Chicxulub crater.
Is that the one in Mexico?
It is.
I know about that.
Right. So if you picture Mexico and the Gulf of Mexico, there's the Yucatan Peninsula that like reaches and curls up and points towards Texas.
Yep.
The Chicxulub crater is right there.
Okay.
And so that's why it calls that. You know, it sounds very sort of Aztec Mayan word. But
I mean,
anyway,
it makes sense.
yeah.
I mean, the namesake does make sense.
Right. And what's cool about it is we came up with the impact theory, the extraterrestrial impact theory, before we found the crater.
Really?
Yeah.
Do we just like want to believe in aliens that badly?
No.
Because I do.
So basically, this father and son team, Luis and Walter Alvarez, who are Spanish, not Mexican, but
I believe it would be pronounced Alvarez.
probably.
Don't butcher their beautiful name, Mark.
I don't speak Spanish. They
no hablo español.
No. Anyway, they basically noticed in 1980 that at the KPG boundary there was a lot more iridium in the soil than normal.
My sister is in the background throwing treats at my cat.
So are you like those old guys in the Muppets that just sit up in the corner and laugh at what's going on below?
She says yes.
Oh, okay.
So my sister Emma is home for the weekend. So say
Hi,
hi,
Emma.
Say hi to everybody, Emma.
Hi.
We had 9 people listen to the last one, so shut up. Anyway,
what they found was that the number of iridium, or the rate of iridium in the soil at this boundary, was 160 times the normal amount.
so what does that mean for the layman's terms?
Basically, what that means is there isn't this kind of iridium in the earth. Like you wouldn't just find this laying around. It had to come from somewhere.
Which would have been like the meteor or the aliens.
Like the meteor. So like
or
think
the
of
aliens.
Right. So you think of like in a crime scene show where they'll find, a body and they're looking at it, but they'll find like a splinter of a rare kind of wood, or a hair of a rare animal or something, or pollen, in their nose that they breathed in that was from a unusual place, right? And that helps the detective solve the crime. Same kind of thing here.
So we looked for the iridium, and then we were like, oh wait, that's not usually there.
It had to come from somewhere, and the only place it can come from is from another piece of our solar system crashing into us.
So does that naturally occur in our planet or no?
Iridium?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. We have iridium, but not at that level.
Okay.
And it's only at that level. Like if you go a little bit below, it's relatively normal amount of iridium. And if you go above, it's another regularly normal amount of iridium. It's only in this boundary where it is highly concentrated. So that's evidence piece number 1. Number 2, there are pieces of shocked quartz and other signs that a huge amount of heat was released somewhere around in the earth, and it basically changed the composition of different minerals all at once.
Okay.
And again, in higher concentrations. You've seen that where, like in World War II or other wars where some explosion goes off in a beach, and then they'll find pieces of glass made from, the bomb going off near the sand and making glass.
Yeah.
So a similar kind of concept there.
All right.
The other thing is, then they found the crater. They found the crater about 10 years ago, as I said, near the Yucatan Peninsula.
Wait, so was that recent?
It was in 1990.
So that's almost 30 years ago.
Right.
You said 10.
They found it 10 years later after they came up with this. After they discovered the iridium layer, they found the crater 10 years later.
Oh, okay. I thought it was... I got confused.
No, that's okay. It's okay.
I was like, wait, Mark, it's 2017. You're old.
I am very old. But the crater is a big one. It's 110 miles in diameter, and it's 12 miles deep.
Yeah, I remember seeing pictures of that in my 9th grade earth science class when we did I think we did dinosaurs. At some point in high school, we talked about dinosaurs.
Right, as you should.
As we did.
Right.
And I remember just seeing that crater and going like, oh man, that's a big crater.
Yeah, it's a big crater.
You could like have a lot of dinosaurs swim in that crater if you filled it up with water.
You could, yes. I don't know what that has to do with anything.
Not many people would think of that. I'm a visionary. That's why I thought of it.
You're something.
That is a very accurate statement.
And so basically they've done a bunch of fancy calculations. Physicists and geologists got together. And so they estimate that the comet or meteor or asteroid that hit the Earth there and made the crater was anywhere between 6 and 9 miles in diameter. So
that's a pretty big meteor.
Still pretty big. And here's the thing that will really blow your mind. So it's estimated to have hit the Earth with the same amount of energy as the A-bomb that was dropped in Hiroshima, multiplied by 10 billion times. Yeah. So, when people dismiss that theory of, oh, how does just a little 6-mile rock hitting the Earth cause a lot of problems?
That's a very powerful 6-mile rock.
Picture 10 billion atomic bombs going off.
I think that would destroy everything on the planet.
You would think, right? But to quote someone, life found a way and it didn't destroy everything.
Jurassic Park quotes.
Yes. And as you said earlier, that it probably was the after effects that really caused the problem. And think about, again, someone who unfortunately dies. Oftentimes they have multiple problems. They could be having pneumonia at the time, so they're weak, right? But then they have a major surgery or get a blow to the head or all these other things that could all happen at once.
Yeah, like it's already compromised and then things just like add up and add up and add up.
Right, and you might survive one or two of those things, but combined all together, you're kind of doomed. And that's kind of what this is. So one thing is it obviously did is cause tsunamis. And we're talking tsunamis that were taller than the Statue of Liberty. So
that's a big wave, man.
Yeah. So, basically think of any dumb Hollywood disaster movie where you see a giant wave crashing on a city.
Like that one The Rock was just in.
Yeah, exactly. That happening all over the New World. Well, what is now the New World.
Yeah.
Giant tsunami wiping out a lot of things. And that is only the beginning. So basically what happens is you not only have that instant impact, but then the impact throws up tons of particles of rocks into the atmosphere, right?
Tons.
And when you have a ton of things in the atmosphere, it's eventually going to come down and it's going to burn in the atmosphere, right? Like think of when you see a shooting star in the night sky, that's its trail. It's lighting up and burning up. But when you have tons and tons and tons and tons of rock burning up like this, it heated up the atmosphere. And there was a heat pulse that lasted anywhere from a couple hours to a couple days, where at least on certain parts of the Earth was heated up to basically what your oven is set when it's set to broil, which is about 500 degrees.
That's very hot.
Right. So there was probably a lot of things that pretty much instantly died from heat stroke.
500 degrees, man.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Us as humans get pissy when it's 100 degrees. Like 5 times that.
Yeah. And imagine going from not that temperature almost immediately to that temperature within a few minutes.
That's double what it would take to boil some water.
Yeah, so exactly.
Were like the oceans boiling at that point then?
Probably part of it was, or at least it heated up, and that probably killed off a lot of things immediately too.
Yeah, because I imagine like that would kill a lot of aqua life if the oceans heated up enough.
Exactly. And then you have another problem that happens.
What's the problem, Mark?
So now you have a bunch of stuff that's in the air that didn't burn up as quickly, right? So you have all this dust in the air, which would have blocked out over 50% of the sunlight for at least a year.
So that's like that volcano in the Netherlands in like 2011, give or take, like on a much larger scale, where like they had the whole.
Indonesia?
No, was it? No, it was like Switzerland area, like 2011 when the volcano erupted.
Oh, you said Netherlands. Okay, I'm like, what? Okay.
I
It's not the Netherlands.
don't
They don't have
remember.
mountains.
I don't remember what country it was.
Okay.
It was in 2011. There was like the big volcano. It was somewhere in Europe.
Okay.
And like the big volcano just erupted.
Oh, Iceland, you mean?
Iceland. Yes.
Iceland.
Iceland.
Okay.
I can't remember things. I have a bad memory.
Right.
Yeah, like so it's like that on a smaller level.
Right. And again, imagine the sunlight being cut in half for more than a year. Farmers know, or anyone that, watches plants will know that it's highly dependent upon the right exact conditions.
Mhm.
Well, now you've just cut off sunlight, essentially. It'd be almost like transferring, the temperate zone that we live in, the majority of the earth is in, and then giving it the sunlight of like northern Sweden.
It's no good, man.
Yeah, we couldn't grow corn, we couldn't grow potatoes, we couldn't grow all that food.
Yeah, without food, things die off.
Yeah, so suddenly you have most of the large plant life on Earth dying, which then creates all the herbivores that eat all that plant life dying, and then all the carnivores that eat that plant life are dying because there's all the herbivores are dead.
Yeah, so when I learned all about all this in school, they just said it was a big bang, they died, moved on to the next topic. They didn't really explain how drawn out it actually would have been. So I've never really thought about it like that.
Yeah, and again, go back to the Great Depression metaphor, where the building blocks of an economy collapse. This is the building blocks of the entire global ecosystem just collapsed, just fell apart. Yeah. So all the rules were just rewritten almost overnight. And then you have like sort of minor side effects. You have acid rain, and you would have a greenhouse effect. And so another fun thing is, after all this has happened, so you have that heat pulse, right?
Mhm.
And now you have all this dust in the air, and you have a lot of CO2 released into the atmosphere, which then would cool the atmosphere because fewer sun rays are getting into the earth, and temperatures would drop. So you have this heat pulse and then temperature drop. That'd be like going from 100-degree weather on your asphalt pavement that you've been standing in, and then going into like a meat locker freezer.
No, it's just like when you like have something that's super hot and it like crumbles when it gets too
Right.
cold. Yeah.
Yeah, and so and again, stop me if you've heard this before. A lot of CO2 in the atmosphere that is changing the climate.
Climate change is real.
Exactly.
Subliminal messaging.
It's not subliminal if you say subliminal messaging.
I need to make sure people know that we are subliminally messaging them into believing that climate change is a thing.
Okay. And then you go to the other thing. There's another suspect. And kind of like some of the better murder mysteries, this one worked together with the other one. So the other component is called the Deccan Traps. And they're called that because Deccan is an area of India, which is where this problem came from.
Mm-hmm.
And the basic idea is, right before the mass extinction event, a huge volcanic event started to happen and lasted anywhere between a couple 100,000 years to a couple million years past the event.
Okay.
And basically what happened is, normally when you think of a volcano, you think of, kaboom, giant lava spewing out, blah, 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 right? But you've probably seen those videos in Hawaii of where...
Yeah, there's volcanoes down there that are just...
It's just sort of oozing.
Yeah, it's just like a consistent light flow.
Yeah, almost like a waterfall, kind of, but
I've
just
seen
lava.
I've seen videos of dudes just in like heat suits, just walking around poking at it with a stick.
Yeah. And so basically part of India just started leaking lava. And that doesn't sound so bad. But what
it's still leaking lava. That's
Right.
Mark, that does sound pretty bad.
No, it is bad. But and you think, well, volcanoes happen here all the time, whatever. And that's kind of true. Oh, but here's one thing you need to realize. So at this time, India was an island, and it was about where Madagascar is now, like on the side of Africa. And it was on its way meeting to hit Asia, which then created the Himalayan mountains. But anyway, so India was just sort of hanging out on its own. But anyway, so it eventually produced so much lava that the lava is estimated to have been bigger than France.
That's a lot of lava.
That's a lot of lava. So just picture all of France just as lava. Now, proportionally to the size of the Earth, that's still fairly small, but that is way more volcanic activity than we have ever seen. And
I mean, that's still the size of France worth of lava.
yeah, it's a lot.
Like there's so much that would be living in that space too.
Exactly. So it's going to kill off things locally. But again, stop me if you heard this before, it's not what directly happens. Because again, think of like when the Chicxulub impactor hit the Earth, it didn't just crush a bunch of animals and the debris that it sent up just didn't crush.
It did, but
it did.
It was so much more than that, though.
Right, but the big part were the after effects. Well, same thing here. And again, stop me if you've heard this before, it would have sent out a lot of ash and dust, which would have gone to the atmosphere. It would have
blocked out the sun,
prevented
the food from growing,
keeping
people from, or not people, dinosaurs from being alive who need the food.
Right.
Without the herbivores, the carnivores don't have anything to eat.
Right.
Because then their food supply is going down too. It's like the whole food chain is just crumbling away.
Right. And it's just making a bad situation worse. And then here's another weird thing. This hasn't been studied yet, but it's actually they're working on it. But so you think, okay, we have a bunch of lava going off, a lot of volcanic activity going on in India. And then suddenly we notice that right after the impact, there's evidence that the volcanism got worse after the impact.
Did it really?
Yes. Now, picture a pie, like a cherry pie, right?
Can it be apple?
It can be apple, whatever you want, right?
I want an apple pie.
And you know those old style pies that have like the lattice crust on top, right? Yeah, right? Now, imagine there's that little hole with a lattice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say you dropped a baseball on the pie. What's going to happen?
That pie's going everywhere.
Well, yeah, but the ooze, the apple mixture, the cherry mixture,
it's going to go through the path of least resistance.
It's going to come out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one theory is one reason why the volcanism got worse is because the Earth was hit by a giant asteroid.
Yeah, so and then that forced all the lava out. Because liquids are lazy; they go through the path of least resistance.
Right.
So that would make sense because it got all impact and it's just trying to get out of there.
Mm-hmm. And so again, like the person with multiple diseases or multiple health issues problem is that the two problems sort of fed on each other's, effects.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, those are the two leading theories, and a lot of popular books or documentaries will claim to act as if scientists go, I don't know what happened, and that is completely wrong.
It seems like we, as I guess society, have a pretty good understanding.
Yeah, and of course there's always questions, and one of the fun...
we weren't there's no way to be positive.
Well, of course, and one of the fun things about science is that the more you learn, the more questions you have.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're going into fine details, and there are some scientists that are, Chicxulub supporters, and there are those that are Deccan Trap supporters, that they believe that those are that's the main show, and that the other one is the side show. But none of them say, oh, no, my thing is the only thing, or, no. It's just, they both sides agree that both things were important. It's just a matter of degree.
Awesome.
And then I want to tell you my nerdiest joke that I invented.
We love nerdy jokes on this podcast.
This is going to take a while. Okay. So you have to think through it. Okay.
You're asking me to think?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So my joke starts with that I think we should not call this the KPG Extinction event.
Okay.
We should be calling it the MC Extinction event. And the reason is, okay, so remember K stands for Cretaceous, and PG stands for Paleogene. And that's correct, because that's the border, right?
Yeah.
But now think back. So what M stands for is Mesozoic, which is the overall period of, Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous. And C stands for Cenozoic, which is the overall period of Earth history that we live in today. It's the bigger event, the bigger period of thing. So again, going back to our Detroit Windsor border idea. Okay, so let's say, saying it KPG is like saying that we are on the Michigan Ontario border. But what is the really important thing? That it's the United States Canadian border, right?
Yes.
That's the more important level. That it's a level, a border between two countries, between a state and a province, right?
Yeah.
So it should be called the MC Extinction Event. That's a little more accurate, or at least a little more relevant.
Okay.
So my joke is,
I was about to say, where's the joke?
You'll
in
see.
this?
So if we call it the MC Extinction Event, then shouldn't we call the Chicxulub asteroid or comet the MC Hammer? Wah,
Can't
wah.
touch this. Do. We should call it the BAC event. Big ass crater. There's my joke.
I like my joke better.
Yeah, no, your joke was actually really great.
Yeah, see? And don't you agree that's the nerdiest joke you've ever heard?
Yeah. Yes, I would agree that. So do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think that's it. Unless you had anything, any questions or things to say.
No, I actually feel like I learned a lot today.
Hooray!
I hope you listeners learned a lot too. I wasn't expecting to learn this much.
Yeah, and again, I hope that this was semi-interesting and not too boring. But
I was interested.
yeah, and it's something that people throw around a lot. Like they'll talk about, they'll talk about like an old piece of technology or a person who's in the workplace that's been there a long time, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm a dinosaur. They don't need me anymore."
Like you.
Right, like me. And that's a misnomer. We shouldn't be saying that.
All right. Well, that was the what was it? The PKG Extinction event.
KPG Extinction event.
PKPG. We've been talking about it for the past 45
Or the
minutes.
MC Extinction
the
event.
MC Hammer Extinction event is what I'm going to call it from now on. So thank you all for listening. We're not going to do this on SoundCloud anymore.
Really?
I've discovered that SoundCloud makes us pay a lot of money.
We don't like paying money.
We don't want to pay SoundCloud that much money. So we're just gonna post it on YouTube now.
Sounds good to me.
You're probably already listening to this on YouTube, so you know this. But yeah, so subscribe to the Mathom House podcast.
You said it right again.
I did. Give us a like. Let's get 5 likes on this audio. I want 5 likes. I'm begging you for likes.
Just give it to him so he'll stop talking.
I will seriously stop talking if you hit that like button.
All right.
I assumed you just hit the like button. Cool. So next time, we are going to do it whenever we feel like it.
A very strict schedule.
Again, because we are busy individuals with busy lives. We're going to talk about professional wrestling.
And we're also going to be talking about, and actually, this is a good thing to bring up. My next topic is going to be a listener or a friend of the show's request. So we're going to be talking about conspiracy theories linked to Egyptian monuments. So like the pyramids and the Sphinx.
Yeah, so next time's going to be good. We're going to talk about one of the best wrestling matches ever between Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada from New Japan Professional Wrestling, and conspiracies. What's not to like about it? You know you're going to love it. We love it. All right. Do you have any last words for the good people, Mark?
Just thanks for listening and see you next time.
Stay classy, San Diego.